I'm Sasha Stefanovic from Purdue Men's Basketball, and you're watching Brags in the Stands.
Big time showdown in Mackey tomorrow, and an even bigger week in Purdue men's basketball. Let's go.
The Bears, they started this new tradition last year where they celebrate their wins the correct way.
Waddle and Sylvie, ESPN 1000, don't miss it.
I know what you mean.
It's like their own Philly.
Okay. Okay, I think what it is.
We shouldn't be showing this. Am I crazy?
by that is, what have I told you? 17 minutes of rain would wash away 108 years of traffic.
Do you see this team growing into the team that you were in 2005?
Great class, everybody.
You are ridiculous.
There it is, ladies and gentlemen. My mic is still muted. Amateur hour here at Braggs in the Stands. Welcome back. I am your host, Gregory Braggs Jr., and we're going to be talking a lot of Purdue men's basketball here tonight. Really exciting week ahead, especially tomorrow night at Mackey Arena. Number 3 in the country, the Purdue Boilermakers move up from 4 to 3 in the latest men's in the AP poll, and number 13 versus number 13 in the country, the Illinois Fighting Illini. And you saw there in the clip, Sasha Stefanovic burying a 3 in the second half in maybe what was the game of the year so far on Martin Luther King Day over there at Illinois, and it went to double overtime, and Purdue came out on top in one of the best games you're going to see all year in college basketball. So excited for round 2, 3 games in the next 5 days or whatever it is. We got one on Tuesday, one on Thursday, and then one on Super Bowl Sunday. But all eyes tomorrow night on the big tilt between Purdue and Illinois, because it really does have a lot of bearing on the Big Ten championship and Big Ten standings overall. And if Purdue wants to give themselves a real chance at winning their 25th Big Ten title, the most of any team in the Big Ten, who also just clinched their 1,000th Big Ten win against Michigan, they're going to have to win tomorrow night if they want a chance at that 25th Big Ten title. So without further ado, we're going to bring on my co-host here for our Purdue shows, and that's our guy Craig Bowers joining us. Perfect timing. You know, he was just getting home, and so we were running all the pregame stuff and all the highlights and everything. Showed the Jaden Ivey game-winning shot. I could play that a million times over Ohio State. Stretched out arms in the corner. Excited to hear what Bobby Riddell, who will be joining us in just a few moments, what his thoughts of it were, because he had a front row seat right behind Jaden when he pulled up for that game winner. How we doing tonight, Craig?
I'm doing good, man. Excited to talk to some Purdue Boiler basketball here again. Seems like there's been 100 games since the last time we talked. I don't know. It feels like we play about every other day right now.
You're 100%. Yeah, you're 100% right. Braggs in the Stands has been on the road, but I went to Illinois with my good friend Nick Henderson, who's actually a big Illinois fan, but we both grew up watching Sasha, become the player he is with his brother Andrew. So it was a lot of fun to watch Sasha shine on that stage, dropping 22 at Illinois and coming out with the win in double OT, and the emergence of Eric Hunter, which we'll get into here later on. And then I went to Iowa, which was an amazing venue, one of the cooler venues I've seen in a long time. With when you enter the stadium, it goes down. You're at the top level when you enter, and then all the seats are below. It's not like a dome when you walk up to Mackey and you have to walk up to your seats. You actually walk down to your seats at Iowa. And then just been all over the place, and it's been a lot of fun doing that. So we're just getting into it here. Bobby Riddell, color analyst for Purdue men's basketball radio, is going to be joining us in just a few moments. So we're going to kind of unwind and get our initial thoughts out. Craig, as you said, it feels like a lot of games have passed since we last talked. And we had the tough loss, because the other road game that I failed to mention was the Assembly Hall debacle, unfortunately, where Purdue couldn't come out on top, at Assembly, which was a really close game and one of the loudest atmospheres I've seen all year. The Assembly Hall fans were rocking, and they gave us their best shot, and they ended up coming out on top at the end with an unfortunate miss by Travion Williams, a bunny he had there. And it seems like since that game, Purdue's been rolling. They've won 5 in a row, and they've really seemed to tighten a lot of things down. Not perfect, which I think is encouraging when you consider the team's aspirations for March. When they're playing as good as they are, there's still a lot of improvement they could be made. But what are your thoughts been since the last time we spoke overall?
Well, I mean, in general, let's talk about the elephant in the room in that IU game. And I'm just of a firm belief that when it comes to rivalry games, you can throw everything else out the window. And it's amazing that we won as many as we did. You look at Ohio State's run in football against Michigan. I think that's kind of similar to what we've been doing to IU. Michigan eventually got Ohio State, even though Ohio State was probably the better team. I think that's kind of the same thing what happened here. There's only so many times in a row you're going to win those rivalry games because it's just that much extra effort.
Right.
You get some crazy stuff that happens in terms of balls going one team's way or another in those rivalry games. And, Harms has that tip in a couple of years ago. They could have beat us that year.
Right. Carson Edwards actually went 0 for 22 in that game.
Right. So it didn't shock me. And let's be honest, IU's playing a heck of a lot better defense than they have in the last few years. And
yes.
Woodson does have them at least doing that at a really high level. But I think we've been locked in a little bit different defensively. I know the statistics don't necessarily show it yet in terms of a massive improvement, but we've had some major stretches in some of these games where we've shown that we can kind of lock people down for stretches. And I think part of that, like you said, teased Eric Hunter. Some of that's Eric Hunter coming back in and getting more of a starting role and starting to assert himself defensively again. But, I've heard some people try to compare us to Iowa when Iowa had that dynamic offense and was terrible defensively. Iowa couldn't shut anybody down anytime.
Right.
They just couldn't. This team has the capability to lock people down. It just seems like for whatever reason, they maybe don't do it for 40 minutes right now.
Yeah, Luka Garza, great player, but not exactly the rim protector that Zach Edey is capable of being. I don't know if they had a Mason Gillis on their team, who is literally a carbon copy of everything Grady Eifert was his senior season, and Mason's only a sophomore, so that speaks volumes. And, something I definitely want to ask Bobby as he gets ready to join us is just the similarities between this team and that Elite Eight team. And I think it starts with Mason Gillis with the Grady Eifert comparison, but I think the comparisons continue to go down the list, which is very encouraging because that's one of the most successful teams in Purdue men's basketball history, at least in tournament time, which is what this is the holy grail for Purdue fans, is getting to New Orleans and getting to the Final Four for the first time since 1980. So we'll see. You're right when it comes to statistics, first in offensive efficiency, according to Ken Pom, but 90th in defensive rankings. But maybe that can be a stat that's misleading if they can play better than what their ranking is by the end of the season. And just at that point in time, come a month from now, be a solid defensive team, but the ranking may not necessarily show that with their full, schedule having already been played. All that matters is how they play in March. So that's what I'm going to hang my hat on, and we'll have to see how it all shakes out. But we are seeing a lot of teams giving Purdue their best punch every single time out. And I think that has a lot to do with it too. When you're a top 5 team in the country, you're typically going to do that. Duke just had a tough game with Virginia here at home. They've had a few tough games at their house. How many times do you see that at Cameron Indoor? But that's what happens. And Purdue's starting to get treated like a Duke team where teams are storming the court when they beat you. I mean, Purdue has lost twice on the road this year, and both times the team has stormed the court. So if that doesn't speak volumes to where this program is, I don't know what does. So without further ado, we're going to bring on our special guest for tonight. He's always given us his time and been very patient with my nonsense. and that's my guy, Bobby Riddell, our good friend here to the show. And again, we really appreciate you carving out some time. We know you got a big game tomorrow night. How you doing, Bobby?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, big one tomorrow.
Big one tomorrow. Yeah, the stalking videos are one thing, but it's going to be hopping. I had some good video action at Illinois with all the double overtime. It was like my hands were shaking for the whole second half and double overtime of that game. And I was able to fire off a few video, which we'll play while we talk here tonight. There's my stalking video as I have some delay. I got to play it every time you're on. But I got something better for you this time, Bobby, because I was rewatching the Michigan game yesterday, and this pulls up on the screen.
I got my zeal.
Yeah, and I had to bring it on the show here tonight. I don't know if Painter ripped one or what. It looks bad in a still shot, but really
that's my blue steel look right there.
It's the blue steel, but he couldn't turn left, and you're turning left there. No, you were it was coming out of break, and you had this stare in your eyes. You were like locked in, focused mentally as far as what Purdue's responsibilities were supposed to be. But it was a funny moment while I was watching the game earlier today, watching it back and seeing your goofy face there. But you had a great vantage point. You got that seat this year. Last year, for your first year as the color analyst for Purdue men's basketball radio, you're way up in the stands where I can come and hawk you. Now you're down by the sidelines. You're right next to the bench, sitting right next to Rob Blackman and Chris Foreman, the Purdue social media guy. And now you're hearing everything Painter's saying to the assistant coaches every time he turns to them. You're hearing all the communication on the court, and you're getting a front row seat for amazing moments such as the Jaden Ivey game winner. We'll start there, and then we'll get in, of course, into the big Illinois game. But what was that like to be there, watch that? Did Painter block your view? And what were your thoughts as it left Jaden Ivey's hands?
Yeah, no question. Super cool moment. Yeah, Coach tried to block my view, as he does oftentimes throughout the game. But you can kind of see me peering to the right around Coach Painter. I could actually see Jaden catch the ball perfectly. And then I had the literally perfect view of Jaden, the angle of Jaden's shot, because I was right behind him. And so I could follow it the whole way with the direct line. And I was like, man, if this thing isn't short or it isn't long, this thing is money in the bank, because it looked right on line the whole time. So to see that thing, hit the bottom of the net was obviously amazing moment. So you just don't get too many, buzzer beaters for your team. And so pretty neat to have that one there.
No, I think they said Purdue hasn't had a buzzer beater at Mackey in 20, 25 years or something like that. Something weird. I wasn't expecting them to say that. And I'm very stickler about that. Sash hit a big shot against Northwestern a couple years ago, but there was 2 seconds left on the clock. I'm like, can we wait till the buzzer sounds? It's cooler when you hit a shot like that as the buzzer goes off in the air, but I'm picky. But it was still an amazing moment. They snuck away with the win against Ohio State on a big stage on a Sunday. They got all these Sunday games in the Sunday, Saturday primetime slate games for the whole world to see next Sunday. Being on Super Bowl Sunday is going to be a big one, of course. But everyone's talking about tomorrow night, Purdue versus Illinois, and that's definitely where I want to start with you. We saw what happened, the double overtime thriller at Illinois. It was a standalone game on Martin Luther King Day. It felt like the whole nation was watching, and Purdue stepped up in a big way and came away with that W. What are your thoughts going into tomorrow night? Are you more concerned about payback time for Illinois? They certainly have a lot of talent. They just came off a big win against Indiana, so they're obviously a good road team. They like to say roadkill when they beat teams. But it's at Mackey, which is an ultimate equalizer in that effect. So where is your mindset when it comes to some of those things? And then obviously what's going on the court?
Yeah, I mean, my main concern with them is just they're really good.
Right.
I've thought all year that Purdue and Illinois were the best 2 teams in the Big Ten, and I didn't think it was particularly close. Wisconsin and Michigan State have certainly had good seasons. Wisconsin obviously getting the best of us at Mackey with Johnny Davis having that huge night was impressive. But I just think talent-wise, the Purdue and Illinois rosters are clear-cut, head and shoulders above everyone else in the Big Ten. So, yeah, the moment Kofi decided he was going to come back this offseason, I was like, oh, son of a gun, because I just saw them immediately, being a team that we were going to have to be reckoned with. And that was before, I knew how good Alfonso Plummer was going to be, or Jacob Grandison, or some of these other guys who have really been quality players for them as well this year. So, and then Trent Frazier and DeMonte Williams, were able to use their COVID year. And that is kind of the one bummer. Like, I'm all for guys playing extra college basketball. That's super cool and happy for them. But our Purdue team is actually one of the few teams that doesn't have like a single guy using his COVID year.
Right.
So unfortunately,
yeah, Sasha gets all these jokes like he's been there since 96, and he's just a regular redshirt guy. And then you got Illinois, who's got like 4 guys that are 23 years old on their team.
Right.
They're bringing a lot of experience. Something, and then I'll kick it to Craig, that stood out to me in that Illinois game, and then also in the loss to Indiana. I hate bringing that one back up, but it kind of stood out again while Illinois was playing Indiana. When Trace Jackson Davis got hurt, Indiana started to play better. And, I think it's matchup contingent. It's not to say that they're a better team without Trace Jackson Davis, but it was just because you got Kofi, this anchor down there. He obviously couldn't handle him in the post, offensively or defensively. So when he came out, they have to run a different style of basketball, and Illinois has to chase that. Well, we saw that in the Illinois-Purdue game. Kofi gets in foul trouble, and now all of a sudden we're having to play a different style of basketball, with Illinois, and it caught up to us where they're running and gunning. You got Curbelo dropping 20. He's doing these pick and rolls, going crashing to the rim, kicking it out, turnaround jumpers, and Purdue was hanging on for dear life in that second half. What do you think that is? Why do you think that is? I mean, because there's a chance Kofi could get in foul trouble again. I mean, there's a chance Purdue could get in foul trouble, but they have a big that plays similar to what Zach Edey's trying to do, so they don't change their style of play if Zach Edey comes out. But if Kofi has foul trouble again, what is the counter that Painter can throw there so that doesn't happen again, if that were to happen again, with Kofi getting in foul trouble and Purdue potentially chasing in a different way?
Sure. No, that's a great point you bring up about just style of play offensively and guys in foul trouble, particularly the bigs, playing through the post versus not playing through the post. Because, Purdue obviously not a great defensive team this year by any means, a pretty average team defensively. But I think where we probably are above average is interior defense on the post. Zach Edey obviously is just a mountain of a man and can guard pretty much anybody's, single coverage on the block. As far as the rest of the country goes, he's going to be as good as about anybody as far as single coverage, guarding somebody on the block. And then what we practice a lot, that Coach Painter's really done a lot throughout his career, is doubling the post. And we do it really well as far as like getting there right on the catch, making those guys retreat dribble towards the corner. And I think I saw some stat, it's been a couple games ago, but something along the lines of we create pretty much all of our turnovers defensively, or a good chunk of them, when we post trap, just because obviously those big guys don't like to be trapped. They don't handle pressure very well. And then we would get a lot of our turnovers out of that post trap. So not only are you stopping the opposition, but you might be getting a turnover, and our defense hasn't created a lot of turnovers naturally this year compared to some other teams. We don't get out and really pressure a whole lot. We don't have a whole lot of high level athletes all over the court. Obviously, Zach and Travion both at times struggle to guard out in the perimeter, Zach in particular. So it's interesting how Trace Jackson Davis gets in foul trouble. They're not able to play through the post. Kofi Coburn's in foul trouble quite a bit. They're not able to play through the post. And then their guards are able to get in ball screen action and carve us up a little bit. So, in a weird way, I think our team invites people playing through the post. Like, yes, please have a great big.
Sure.
We saw Hunter Dickinson, like they didn't play through the post at all, really, because there was no success there. He had all of his success pretty much picking and popping. So,
what's the counter? I mean, that's my question is do you think Painter has something up his sleeve? I know he sees it, I mean, I know he's also one of those people who's like, we're going to do what we do. Maybe it's play Travion more because he can get out to the perimeter more. But I just wonder about that sometimes, as far as when a team goes real small on us, it felt like the Rutgers went real small, and we have trouble with that at times. And why doesn't Purdue just match and go smaller? Of course you have 2 All-Americans, so I guess that's the answer. You don't leave 2 All-Americans off the floor, but at the same time, when we're getting cooked, it's like, is there a counter action to that other than playing harder?
Right. I mean, it's a give and take. Like, Zach, unfortunately, is not going to change physically who he is this year. Like, he's going to be slow-footed on the perimeter, and he even moves like fairly well for a guy his size, of course, but he's going to be slow-footed on the perimeter no matter what. The flip side of that, of course, and where Coach Painter is always in that conundrum, is if another team is going smaller, has a perimeter big that's picking and popping. Hunter Dickinson obviously is the rare occasion where he's picking and popping and he's not small, but most cases, if there's a guy who's kind of like you said, if they go small, well, then on the other end, Zach is feasting, like going to be absolutely feasting. We're going to be getting whatever we want on offense, of course, which is what happens right there, for instance, in this Illinois game. But like you're saying, on the other end, if they're getting him out in space and ball screen action, making him move around a lot, then we could be in a lot of trouble. So it's, okay, do you go smaller and play him like a guy like Travion, or even Caleb first at the 5, where you have better defense, better movement, but then you're giving up, of course, your offensive advantage as well. So obviously Travion, in theory, could still give you a lot of offensive punch while giving you some better defense. And I think we started to see that in the Michigan game, of course, because Dickinson was having so much success picking and popping.
Yeah, I thought he took it personally. Dickinson's waving around his arm beneath his legs, and Travion, that was, Edey getting picked and popped. It felt like more than a few times. Travion comes in and starts to shut that down, and Hunter turned the ball a few times at the end, wasn't waving that arm between his legs. He needs to get teed up for that, Craig, don't you think? I mean, come on. We all know what he's referencing there. I mean, you mentioned it in your –
that his knees are sore, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, no. I said that too. I mean, I think it's painfully obvious what he's insinuating there, and at some point, they got to go ahead and tee him up for that. I mean, come on.
It was out there. I like that he, like somebody pointed out on Twitter, I like that he likes to take on the villain role, but that one, it was like, come on, man. There's women and children in this.
Yeah, I'm all for playing to the crowd, like a little bit, like that's fun, and embrace the environment. Like, the old, like one of these, like, okay. Right. But 1, doing what he did is ridiculous. But 2, like after every made shot, do you have to address the crowd? Like after every made field goal? Like how about like once in the first half, once in the second half?
Yeah. And then for Purdue fans to, then they kind of went back, returned the favor at the end, doing the FU Hunter chant at the end, which, FU Harms at Assembly got a lot of press and that one didn't. So I saw Purdue fans saying, let's cut that out and keep it above the fray. But all silly stuff that has nothing to do with the actual game on the court. But Craig, what do you got for Bobby here as we roll along into the IU or the Illinois pregame coverage here?
Yeah, I guess as we go into that Illinois Purdue game, just a couple of comments first. One, like, Kofi's going to come out mad because that was a bad showing for him the last time
Zach
around.
Was so good.
Yeah, Zach dominated him, and there was a lot of narrative around it. And then the second thing, to me, that's really the first game that Curbelo played a decent amount of minutes again. And like Greg mentioned, he kind of carved us up there for a little while. Do you expect to see, he's only been playing about 12 to 15 minutes a game since then even. Do you expect to see Illinois play Curbelo a lot more against us just off of the success that they had?
Yeah, it's interesting. I know he had some COVID health and safety protocols, so he missed a couple games with that. So that's obviously probably hurt, his stamina and minutes and things like that too. But yeah, that game against us, like he hadn't played in 2 months and comes out and plays like the most minutes he had played, obviously in a long time. It was like hitting a lot of difficult shots, honestly. And a number of those shots, I don't think we would necessarily hate if he took again kind of thing, but, give him credit. He made them. So yeah, I'm certainly expecting to see a decent amount of Curbelo. They're going to try to get, especially when Zach's in the game, they're going to be trying to get Zach spaced out on the floor in high ball screen action, because not only can Kofi score on the block really well, but he's really good at setting high ball screens and diving to the rim for lobs and dump offs and things like that. So I would expect instead of them having to try to slam Kofi against Zach in the post a lot, where he might have some success, but maybe not a whole lot. I would think they might try to get some high ball screen action and get Zach out in space and have Kofi dive into the rim and things of that nature. So obviously Curbelo will be their best guy at that, doing that. Trent Frazier and Plummer can certainly do it a little bit as well. But I expect to see a decent amount of Curbelo, particularly like you said, since he played well against us. But we'll be, better prepared at least this time. Coach even talked about it, like we didn't really do a whole lot of prep for Andre Curbelo and what his ball screen world is like, because his ball screen stuff is different than what Frazier and Plummer do. Those guys are a little bit more coming off looking to shoot, whereas Curbelo is completely coming off looking to try to get to the rim or play make. So
just run around in circles until something opens up.
Yeah, he really does.
Does a great job keeping his dribble alive, circles underneath sometimes, things like that. And so we'll be better prepared, at least for, because we'll guard that differently. I'm sure like our coverage, our ball screen coverage will be different because, you don't worry about him stepping back behind a ball screen and popping you from distance. Although we didn't worry about Rob Finney doing that either. And so we saw it happen. But, sometimes, obviously you play the percentages and then sometimes things don't go your way. But,
I was looking back at that game offensively, and that game was so long. It's kind of crazy to think back about because, like, we had these stretches where different guys for us, like at the beginning of the game, it was like the Zach Edey game. Like, he was dominating, And then that kind of slowed down a little bit, and we had this stretch where Jaden was just getting to the line. I think he took 15 free throws, and it was just killing people on the dribble, attacking the lane. It wasn't a great shooting night for him, but, fans got to remember free throws count. And he got to the line a ton and put it in a ton. And then in overtime, all of a sudden, Travion shows up with his passing, and Eric Hunter shows up with his cuts. And there were so many pieces to that game. And one of the things that I noticed, and I posted this the other day, between our point guards in the last 6 games going into the Michigan game, they had been shooting 53% from field goal, 50% from 3, 15 points a game, almost 4 assists a game to 1 turnover a game. And there's been a lot said about our point guard position, but I think over the last 6 to 7 games, both Eric and Isaiah, it seems like one of those two has really stepped up huge, maybe more so than they were earlier in the season. I guess maybe speak to that. And what do you see from our point guard position and how important that is for us to have a deep run?
No question. I mean, it's a hugely important position for our team, and in a position that was definitely up and down at the start of the year. And both those guys really now kind of settled in nicely. Eric Hunter in particular, I mean, at the start of the season, this was before I knew that he wasn't going to be starting out the gates like he had, the previous 2 seasons. I called him the X factor for this team. I just felt like if he was good, Eric Hunter, kind of like how he was a majority of his sophomore season, our ceiling was substantially raised, I felt like, as a team, just because it gave us a second guy who could push the ball in transition and make plays for himself or others. A guy who could maybe make a play in the half court, late shot clock. So I felt like his play this year, and obviously the third biggest key about him is he is our best perimeter defender. And obviously, as we've seen with our team this year, defense hasn't been our calling card. So every minute, you have one of your best defenders on the court is going to be a positive with this team this year. But his lack of offensive play to start the season was just like, it was such a killer because you were sacrificing so much offense with him on the court compared to Isaiah at the time, with him struggling with the shooting. Wasn't finishing around the rim very well. I think just confidence-wise, obviously probably not starting the season, feeling like, man, I can't believe I lost my spot. I'm sure confidence-wise he was really struggling. So to see him starting to flourish and be playing like a senior and just making shots, you can tell the swag's back. He's been fun to be around on the road because you can tell he's just like in a good place. And so I'm really happy for Eric. He's a fun guy to be around. And so this team, the ceiling has been raised on this team if Eric is able to play anywhere close to how he's playing right now. And then, like Isaiah scored 18 points on the road at Iowa. So,
they both got career highs, Isaiah and Eric, in back-to-back games or almost every, in 2 of the last 3 games.
Yep. And so Isaiah's had his moments too, but obviously he's not quite the defender Eric is. in probably a perfect world, Isaiah is probably better suited for that bench role, come in, take care of the basketball, make open shots, but then maybe doesn't get exposed as much defensively, in that bench role. So I think it's hopefully this lineup just continues to flourish and then takes us to the promised land.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of good trends that are going to bode well for March that I want to finish with, but to stick to some of the recent improvements, and I'm probably going to steal a little thunder from Craig here in regards to Jaden Ivey. Obviously this is the Sasha Stefanovic stan show, but I know Craig is also, and we're all big stans of Jaden Ivey, but he also gets a lot of backdoor criticism, from Purdue fans that watch very hard, whether it's on the defensive end or offensively when he's trying to do too early in the year, trying to do too much, push, driving to the lane without really an idea of what he's trying to do, or, even, now he still shoots, early in the shot clock, and you'll see Painter kind of throw his hands up every once in a while. But, I think he's a great playmaker like Carson Edwards or Jaden Ivey. They want to see what they can do on the court. But at the same time, like I said, a lot of different backdoor criticisms from Purdue fans that think they know a lot about the game. But at the same time, the thing that stood out to me in this 5-game winning streak, and even if you take away the IU game and just since the Wisconsin game, I feel like Jaden Ivey is a totally different player. Craig's pointed this out on his Facebook post where he does his 10 thoughts after each game on the Boiler Diehards page, which is a great page for those of you to follow. And I agree, for anybody that's really keying in on what Jaden's up to, he, to me, is ascending into a totally different stratosphere of what he was to start the year. Yeah, he's a great playmaker. He can make threes. He's unbelievable, jumping from 23% into the mid-40% at three-point range. But the biggest improvement has been he stopped driving to the rim with reckless abandonment and now has a plan when he goes in there, and he's coming around these pick and rolls with Zach and Edey, or Zach Edey and Travion, and he's taking his time. He's putting the defender on his back hip, and he's using his length and his strength to either make that center come up to him and commit, where he drops it off to the center. You saw that a couple times against Michigan, where he dropped it off to Travion after Hunter came up on him. Or if they don't, then he's either laying it in or kicking it out to a shooter. Could have easily had over 10 assists in the last game if Sasha and a few guys knocked down some shots. And I just feel like this new and improved, under control Jaden Ivey is the type of guy that can take you into March. And something Craig's pointed out, and I heard Brian Newbert pointed out on his goldenblack.com breakdown after a game. I think a lot of us forget this is a player, and all these players are those that are still becoming who they are. They're not a finished product by any means. They're young guys. What have you thought of how Jaden has matured throughout this year, specifically in the last couple of weeks, adding this crab dribble, hesitation dribble to the rim, to his repertoire, and how exciting does that get you about where he can take this team going forward in February and March?
Yeah, his play as of late, has been extremely encouraging. Obviously, all season he's been really impactful and had dominant moments, of course, throughout the year. But as you said, pretty much since that Wisconsin game, I think he took that one personal, and he's been really good. I mean, even in the IU loss, he, outside of when he lost his temper there and his emotions got the best of him in the first half, I mean, he carried us in that second half and brought us back in that game. And, I know Craig and I were both hoping to see maybe a little bit more action with Jaden, and some ball screen stuff. And we certainly saw a lot of it last game, and he was terrific. I mean, Robbie Hummel, who's doing the Illinois Purdue game tomorrow, this morning, he was watching because he does a game every day.
Yeah,
he was able to watch the Purdue Michigan game live. And so he watched it back this morning, and he texted me, and he's just like, Jaden Ivey's first half against Michigan, hello. And I was like, yeah, it was, obviously incredible performance, because as you said, Greg, like a couple of passes that we didn't convert that would have been assists that were awesome. Like he had that left-handed cross-court pass to Mason on the last play of the first half that was like right on the money that, Mason just wasn't able to hit, but it was a big-time pass. And Yeah, he was awesome. And obviously defensively, you would still like to see just a little bit more intensity and being in a stance and things like that a little bit more often. But obviously he still is able to have impactful moments on that end of the floor, especially when he's engaged. But offensively, in transition and now even in the half court, playing with more patience, playing more under control. When he's got an angle, he attacks with unbelievable burst, but also able to kind of slow play it, grind it, and then use his size and athleticism against, smaller guards around the rim. Because these bigs, as you can tell, like sometimes these bigs, when he comes off, they're so worried about Zach or Travion that they don't quite stop him all the way and make him give it up. And then he's able to kind of hesitate, keep his dribble alive, lets that big retreat, and then he's able to finish, through contact with just a smaller guy or even get all the way to the rim. And then a couple plays, really good job of getting in there, jump stopping. Okay, it's not quite there. Plays behind me, Mason raising, wide open, and he makes the right play. So he's just made amazing strides with his decision making. His passing ability is incredible. It's, most of the time you tell people don't jump in the air to pass because it's usually bad news. Well, he's one of those rare humans who is able to do it at a pretty high level because he just hangs in the air until the defensive side is where they're going to go, and then he just finds whoever is open. So we're very lucky. I know, like you were saying, some people, get on him from time to time because, he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. Like, he's not perfect. Like, he's going to make mistakes occasionally. But Purdue fans, we haven't seen anybody like him, since Glenn Robinson, as far as just being this dominant, and being this special from a physical tool standpoint. So appreciate him while we have.
Painter's probably his biggest critic. I mean, if you really watch, if you're there, or if you're on TV and you watch him when Jaden makes his decisions, my eyes always immediately after every possession, whether either side of the ball, I look at what Painter's yelling, or is just he gives it up by his mannerisms. Painter does, of what he's thinking on what they want to do. And I feel like he's probably the hardest on Jaden more than anybody, even more than the diehards in the Boiler diehard page. But I also feel like it was a evolving trust. Like, early in the year, you could see Jaden was trying to do too much. He's so excited. There's fans in the stands for the first time in his career. He's playing in front of a full Mackey Arena crowd, and he just wants to do the showtime and yell to all the fans and get all hyped. And that's who he is. That's what inspires him to be great. And I love that about him. But once he slowed his game down, now the thing that you and Craig and a lot of others, Robbie Hummel on telecast, have said it, now he's giving him a lot more ISO pick and roll that we saw at the end of last year. And I did trust that Painter was eventually going to go to that. And I just think he wanted everyone to commit to the system first before we just start going and doing our own thing, have a foundation for who you are as an offense and then work off of that. And I think that's what we're starting to see with Jaden Ivey and Purdue.
Yeah, Jaden's been it's such a luxury to have a guy like Jaden who, because obviously we like to run a lot of stuff and we're the best offense in the country. So it's hard to nitpick our offense too much, of course.
Yeah.
Coach Payne and the staff have done an incredible job. We have a number of incredibly talented players. Sasha, of course, our guy, is just so critical to this offense as far as his passing, his floor spacing, his shot making on the move, his post feeding, all that sorts of stuff. Sasha's done an incredible job. And how about his finishing around the rim? Sasha doing like ball, pass fake.
The up and under. I'm like, who are you, dude?
Yeah. So Sasha has been getting in his bag of tricks, which has been fun to see. But so, we like to run a lot of stuff. And a lot of teams were able to move the ball, swing it side to side, get into our actions and score easily. But there's been a couple of occasions this year where like a team goes zone like Michigan did. And we're having a hard time getting any open looks, or teams really start pressuring us on the perimeter like Indiana's doing, and we're not getting any easy catches. And who's the luxury? Who's the guy that we have to be like, hey, here's a high ball screen, or go make a play and just take this dude in hesitation, dribble 3-ball in his face. Like Jaden is that guy for our team that can make individual plays off the bounce that against teams that are really pressuring and really not allowing easy catches for us to reverse the basketball, and also against teams that maybe go zone or go some sort of weird junk defense or something like that. Mm-hmm. So Yeah, I mean, that's what makes this team so special is we can beat you in so many ways.
Yeah, Painter said on his show tonight, just give the ball to Jaden, get out of the way, and go eat some nachos. And I thought that was a great line because that is what it's becoming, and that's just a great thing. He's, even there on the follow-up, he's great with that, just putting it up on the backboard and going and getting it himself. So love where Jaden Ivey is ascending. Obviously, they only get him for the next couple months because he's going to be a top 5 pick in the NBA. So hopefully they can get as much out of him as they possibly can before he makes his way into the NBA and starts giving my Chicago Bulls nightmares. So, Craig, sorry for stealing your thunder on the Jaden Ivey talk, but I had to because I've just been loving what I've been seeing.
Man, you brought it up, and then Bobby pointed out everything that I wanted to chime in on that too. So
me and Craig have been
feeling pretty solid about my basketball mind because Bobby keeps saying what's in my head. So
yes, hey, when if they ever need a 3-man booth, they can call you in there, Craig. You do a great job. I have to give you credit. Some you see different podcasts. My guys, Brian Tonsoni with the Assembly Call, they immediately go live after IU games, and some of my different Chicago sports podcasts, they'll go live immediately after the game. I try to after some Bears games. My head is just spinning after games because my emotions are in the game, and I'm following every possession and dissecting it. But I have to go back and watch the next day to really understand what transpired a lot of the time. And you do a great job, Craig, of giving your 10 thoughts right away. And I feel like they're always well articulated and well thought through. And considering when the game is just ended to have that, I think Brian Newbert also does a great job with that. I don't know if I'm capable of that because all I do is ramble and keep Bobby on for way too long when I say I'm going to keep him short. So, but go ahead, Craig. What else do you got for our Bobby? Like I said, I'm trying to keep him shorter than his normal hour and 20 minutes that we make him do here in his torture time on Brags in the Stands. But let's fire away with a few more, and then we'll let him go to bed.
Yeah, I had an interesting thought today, and I was thinking about how the Big Ten is being viewed as in the NCAA tourney in terms of seeds, in terms of talking heads, talking about who has a chance to actually win the tournament and that type of thing. And as I was thinking about it, one of the knocks against the Big Ten teams a lot of times is that we don't have a lot of elite NBA lottery pick type talent.
Absolutely.
And especially at the guards and the wings. And to me, right now, we have 3, Jaden, Johnny, Keegan, probably top 15 NBA draft picks that are guards or wings.
Yep.
When's the last time the Big Ten had 3 top 15 NBA draft picks?
Just draft picks in general, not even wings.
Not even guards and wings, just draft picks in general.
Do you know?
I know. I looked it up.
And top 3 or 3 of the top 15. Man.
Well, I would have to, if I had to guess, it would have to be the year that Cody Zeller and Victor Oladipo were both in the top 5, but I would not be able to name the third player.
You got it right there.
Maybe a Michigan guy.
Who's the third guy, Bobby?
Maybe a Michigan guy.
Trey Bird.
Draymond? Oh,
Trey Bird.
Yeah.
Yep. Those 3. And that was, I screenshot it and I cut the year off. It was either 13 or 14.
Right. 13. 13, yeah.
Yeah, with those 3. It's been that long. And one of those was a big man. If I went back to 3 guards or wings, right, we're going back a while. And I just think they're getting undersold because we have NBA 10. We haven't even talked about the big men in the Big Ten that potentially are going to go in the draft. But we have 3 that are getting mocked in the top 15 that are guards or wings. But everybody says you have to have them come March. I think they're underselling what these Big Ten teams can do as a whole come tourney time. Thoughts?
I hear you. Yeah, I mean, those guys are all studs for sure. We'll see if Iowa is able to, get their way into the tournament. I think they will. I think they could maybe be like a 10 seed, and that definitely wouldn't be, a 10 seed you'd love to play necessarily because Keegan Murray's a flat-out stud for sure. But, I'm with you. I mean, the Big Ten, rightfully so, hasn't won a title since 2000. I mean, that Indiana team, 2013, that Indiana team was loaded. Obviously, Oladipo and Zeller, 2 top 5 picks. Yogi Ferrell was a freshman on that team. He was a pro. And that Michigan team was loaded with pros: Trey Burke, Stauskas, Glenn Robinson III, Tim Hardaway Jr., Mitch McGarrett had a cup of coffee in the league. So, Spike Albrick, of course, elite point guard.
Elite.
And so they had
a statue if they'd have finished that second half.
I know. I mean, and so Michigan, of course, makes the title game that year. Impressive run, and not surprising when you actually look at all the pros they had. And then Indiana, I think was the best team in the country that year, and they
couldn't beat a Syracuse.
Kind of a crazy
Syracuse.
Bad matchup. That's the beauty and the pain of one and done action. So yeah, we haven't had outside of obviously the last time we won the Big Ten team won the title was 2000. So we definitely need one of those just to get that monkey off our back. And as you said, this year, I think there's a couple teams, if I don't think Wisconsin's Final Four national title good, but if you told me Johnny Davis did some sort of Kemba Walker, put the team on his shoulders action and got his team to the Final Four, I wouldn't be stunned. But then I do think Illinois and Purdue are probably only the 2 other teams that can make the Final Four. Sparty, I think they just, although, Izzo just does it all the time, but I feel like they lack star power. You're talking about star power. They actually feel like kind of one of those, they feel like an old school Purdue team that's got like a bunch of good players, but lacks some of the star power. That's kind of how Michigan State feels to me. So I feel like they're kind of like a second weekend team, but no further.
Ohio State.
Yeah, Ohio State. EJ Liddell is a stud.
They got a few guys on that roster, maybe not household names, but
that Branham's a pro. That dude's really talented.
Did he drop like 37 in a game, or was that the other guy?
Yeah, Craig. You didn't mention Branham, but like he might be a lottery pick too at some point. So the Big Ten, we got some guards and some wings that can play. So it'll be interesting to see.
Look at Ayo DeSumo and the scouting evaluation he got, and thankfully he did because he fell to number 38 to my Chicago Bulls, who didn't have a first-round pick. And all they had was a second-round pick, and they came away with a guy that's in the running for Rookie of the Year. He may not win it, but he's played unbelievable. And as soon as he was drafted, I'm thanking the high heavens because I've watched him the last couple of years. I watched him even in high school, covering, Illinois high school athletics for Region Sports Network. I got to see a handful of his games. He's been a dog, a gamer, every bit of the word since he was a young player in high school, going through battles in Chicago. High school basketball is some of the best high school basketball you'll see. I know some people down south in Indiana would beg to differ, but they're neck and neck as far as competitiveness. And I'd say the talent level in Chicago is unbelievable at times. And then obviously his grind through the Big Ten and playing till his junior year because of a COVID shortened season, didn't get to play in a tournament in his sophomore year, ends up getting that extra year of maturity. And everybody completely overlooks Ayo. And he could have won Big Ten Player of the Year last year. And I that just completely was so disrespectful to me when you can say, oh, okay, he can't jump over the rim like Jaden, but he's a leader. He, and has every bit of intangibles you need. Now, granted, he fell to the perfect team because they have, DeRozan and Levine and Vucevic and then you got Caruso and Lonzo and all these different pieces. So he gets to be the guy that is like this silent sniper assassin that you're not expecting. And he's just been doing amazing for the Bulls. But I think if he had been drafted by any team, he would have ascended at some point for any of them because of the player that he is. And the NBA completely missed out on that. So I think maybe with Ayo's, ascension here in the NBA, maybe scouts will start giving a harder look at the Big Ten, because it is a different style of basketball, an older school style of basketball than what we're seeing. You watch the SEC or the ACC and all, it's just run and gun. There's no setting up plays. They're just screen and roll and kick, transition. And, you watch an Auburn game, it's like their hair is on fire the entire time. And, you kind of laugh when it comes to how the Big Ten is played. It's just like two different planets that they play on. So, last one, unless Craig has one more for you, but this is definitely how I wanted to wrap it. We've talked about Illinois, certainly looking forward to the game tomorrow night. Big week ahead in general, 3 games over the next few days because of the scheduling change with Michigan. So now it's, we'll see if they can make a little run here or if it's going to be tough with fatigue. I'm not, I wouldn't put anything past Purdue. They're playing at such a high clip right now. They can string some wins off here, even if it seems tough. But overall, I'm starting to see a lot of similarities to that Elite Eight team. I'm just, everything I watch with this team, I'm like, how are they going to do in March? And I feel like that's how all Purdue fans are. It's like, that's great. They barely won today, but what does this mean for March? And I think just because the first round failure of last year versus North Texas and knowing that this is their only shot with this team, with Jaden Ivey and the seniors leaving, and maybe Zach Edey leaves. I hope not selfishly, but the way he plays, you never know. He could get drafted too. So you just don't know who's going to be here next year. So it feels like a last dance for romance with this particular squad. They are feeling more and more like this Elite Eight team and I watched that was the first year I was a season ticket holder. They went undefeated at home, and I'm looking around at Purdue fans like, what's the big deal, guys? This is fun. Like, you guys are all stressed out. Undefeated at home, go to the Elite Eight, win a Big Ten title, quit crying, and then I learned my lesson against Virginia. But regardless, the similarities are just starting to get eerie. Grady Eifert was number 1 in offense efficiency that year. And now Mason Gillis, who looks like a carbon copy of Grady Eifert, maybe a little more athletic, maybe a little more bulk, but Grady had some more experience being a senior. They're like carbon copy of each other. Sasha and Ryan Klein. Sasha has become every bit the player Ryan Klein was, and I couldn't have asked for more. I'm sure that's what he wanted. Sasha as his goal watching Dakota and Ryan when he first got here. He's every bit of what those guys were as seniors for Purdue. Jaden Ivey, Carson Edwards, explosive, dynamic guards. They might score in a different way here and there, but at the end of the day, just explosive athletes that can do it on their own outside of the Painter system. Then the bigs, you got Matt Harms, Zach Edey, I think is a way bigger improvement to Matt Harms, all respect to Matt. And then you had Travion coming off the bench for that Elite Eight team. Well, he's a senior now coming off the bench. So an improvement to there. And then you mentioned how well Eric Hunter played that season as a sophomore, and now he's emerged. And so I just look at all that across the board, starting with Mason Gillis, I feel like is the nuts and bolts of this argument. But are they feeling like that Elite Eight team to you in similarities in how they play and potential for March?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there is a lot of similarities, including, Sasha, Eric, and Travion all being on that team. Yep. There's a lot of similarities. The Grady Mason comparison, as you talked about, it's shocking, how similar it is. Both those guys, their style of play, their relentless drive, chasing loose balls, crashing the glass.
Timely rebounds.
Both play so hard. Both are just, absolutely money in the bank on open triples. And they're similar size as well. Like you said, Mason maybe shredded a little bit more than Grady was, but both
don't
guys.
Let Grady see this.
Yeah. I don't think Grady walked around with his shirt off quite as much as Mason does probably, but yeah, it's stunning. And then like Ivy and Carson are obviously both electric at the guard position. Klein and Sasha are clones essentially. So yeah, it's amazing. Harms, it's interesting because then you basically, the two differences essentially become Harms as more of a defensive oriented center, rim protection, things like that, moved his feet pretty well for a big guy. And No-Gel, obviously an elite perimeter defender at the point. Yes. And then kind of the two differences would be Isaiah and Zach Edey. And Isaiah is much more of an offensive minded guard, big time shooter, make you pay if you leave him open. Zach, obviously not really a defensive center per se, does provide rim protection, does provide good post defense, but, struggles out in the perimeter. But then offensively, he's just unstoppable. So yeah, it's kind of the exact same team, except for two elite offensive, two good offensive pieces, one elite offensive piece. And then on the other side, it was 2 strong defensive pieces. But both teams obviously very talented. And so we'll see. Hopefully we do have at least a similar run, but just take it a couple steps further.
Sure. And I think Zach's an improvement to Matt. But do you think that Jaden is the guy that could become that no gel on defense if he accepts the challenge? I just look at the athleticism and length, and that's what Nogel was a great defensive player.
He has the physical characteristics.
Yeah, and Nogel, was a lockdown defender and actually had a decent offensive year that year. Was able to get, because people would lose him because you're worried about everything else going on with Carson and Klein and Grady, knocking down his shots. But man, I look at Jaden and I see a guy that, I know he knows he's big time. And if you want to be a top 3 pick, lock some, just do what Nogel did and just be a disruptor at that end. I'm not saying you have to completely lock down. You're not completely locking down Johnny Davis. You're not going to completely lock down, Trent Frazier tomorrow night. What?
How many points did Johnny Davis actually score on Jaden?
Oh my gosh, he'll never let this go. He scored quite a few. It was a bad day.
7 points.
Okay, regardless, and he gave up 2 big threes to Davison, as we talked about. Now, listen, I'm just saying for March, I love Jaden. I'm not trying to over criticize him, but he would be the first one to tell you that wasn't good enough defensively that day. I just look at him because the other guys are solid and are going to do what they can, but Jaden can do more than what the others are capable of. Sasha is actually having, to me, a great offensive year by what I watch every breath he takes. And I think he's doing great defensively, but he can only do so much. He can't do the things Jaden does. Granted, Sasha.
How about Sasha?
The block.
Off the backboard.
Yeah, he's playing out of it's like outer body experience with some of the things he's doing lately. And that's what he should be doing. It's his senior year. This is it for him. So I'm happy that he's able to do that. But I just look at Jaden and his capabilities. And I know it's a long-winded statement here, but I just feel like he could do what Nogel did on that end. Yeah, he might lose a guy here and there, but just be that disruptor, and I know early in the season he was getting those transition steals for dunks, and maybe that's getting him in trouble now, peaking a little too much or whatever. But I feel like he's done a lot better since Wisconsin. Teams are just getting hot against Purdue. I mean, Minnesota and Ohio State, it was ridiculous, some of the shots they were hitting. I didn't necessarily think it was the worst defense in the world. So can Jaden be that guy, or somewhat 3/4 of what Nogel was that season?
Hey, I want to ask Braggs a question first before you. How many guys in the NBA that are the primary offensive threat for their team are also a shutdown defender?
Well, I know that's what Painter wants, man. He talks about being a 2-way player.
You can be a good defender, but when you talk about Nogel, the amount that he expended energy-wise on the defensive end, and then to ask Jaden to also do what he does offensively. Anyway, I'll let Bobby weigh in now.
No, I mean, Craig stole my thunder there. Yeah, like for sure. As far as Nogel's role in that team was to just literally, offensively, essentially just stand in the corner and then crash the glass, maybe drive it every once in a while. But of course, he was just setting up the other guys. And then defensively, it was 110%, going crazy, pressuring, full court, being a nuisance, and then using his extreme size and athleticism, to be able to guard multiple positions and be a pest. And Jaden obviously also has some amazing physical characteristics with the size and athleticism. And we've certainly seen at times individual one-on-one perimeter defense, guys trying to take him, like the guy for Florida State, who was a really talented wing. I'm blanking on his name. He tried to take Jaden a couple times, and he was scoring buckets on a lot of our guys. But when he tried to take Jaden one-on-one, it did not go well. The ball was getting beat into the stands.
You saw it in the Illinois game with that big block when the guy tried to drive on him.
Jaden is an incredible one-on-one individual defender. If you try to take him one-on-one, it's not going to end well for you for the most part. So, Purdue's hope would be, as Craig said, unfortunately, because he's so involved offensively, he's not going to be able to expend as much energy defensively as we all would love him to do. That being said, he could still, ramp things up a little bit more from time to time. Could be We're locked in off the basketball, things like that. But where Purdue, has hopefully as Purdue fans, what we can hope is, tourney time when the stakes are even higher, his focus, his attention to detail, his adrenaline, all that sort of stuff will be amped up even more. And maybe we'll get a couple more pops of elite defense. Because I remember the North Texas game last year, their little point guard was having all kinds of success. But then a couple times when it was Jaden, it didn't go well for him. And so you can't have him probably guard the best offense player all the time because, like Craig pointed out, the energy. Granted, that being said, college basketball, there's a lot of stoppages, a lot more than like the NBA. It's a shorter game. But you also don't want to be getting foul trouble either. So,
yep, that's a good point. I just, I think the world of Jaden, so I want him to be perfect. And I feel like every game he gets a little better and better. I feel like he's getting better offensively and defensively, which I think is a scary thing, scary proposition for college basketball because he's already a very great player and a top 5 NBA draft pick already. And as he gets better, it's only going to be tougher for teams.
You know what it kind of reminds me of? I remember some of those Cavs teams, LeBron a lot of times wouldn't guard the best player for a lot of the game, but then last like 5 minutes, he would lock in on Steph or whoever it was and would be big time. So maybe it could be something similar that Purdue follows as far as like, hey, let's keep Jaden out of foul trouble. Let's not have him expend a lot of energy most of the game, but like in winning time, hey, Jaden, we need you to,
And I think the emergence of Eric Hunter getting more minutes now and his defensive prowess, as you mentioned, is big. But there's a trade-off. This team has been, recruited to be a great offensive team, and that they are. Maybe one of the greatest statistical offensive teams in college basketball history, according to Ken Pom and other different rating systems. And, that Elite Eight team was great, but Matt Harms and Nogel left some to be desired on the offensive end. And this team has nothing but offensive firepower. They got 7 guys shooting 40% from 3.
8 now.
Travion now. So they have 8 guys shooting 40% from 3.
Yeah.
Number 1 offensive efficiency. They got the number 1 offensive efficient player. I could go all day about it, and we all know I can talk all day. So we're not going to do that to you, Bobby. We're going to let you get to bed. Big game tomorrow night at Mackey Arena. Any final thoughts in regards to that or the week ahead that lays for Purdue basketball?
Just, big week, obviously, as far as trying to win the Big Ten, this week's probably going to go a long way as far as doing that, beating Illinois, being the most critical of those, just because Illinois is the other elite team, in my opinion, the other team that can probably cut down the nets at the end of the day besides us, I think. And so it would be nice for us to do our part and control our own destiny against them and give them another L, with them being 1 L less than us in the standings. So if we want to win the Big Ten, tomorrow night's game, massive. And then, hopefully we get I know we'll see Mackey just off the charts tomorrow, and hopefully everyone's out in full force and is able to give us that slight edge to be able to pull out the W.
That's right. That's right, Bobby. Blue steel, as it were. So, all right.
That was probably after a Jaden dunk, and I was probably like, ooh.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You do that a few times with Jaden. So hopefully we see a few more of those tomorrow night. House will be rocking at Mackey. Look forward to hearing your pregame coverage. Postgame, I'll be at the game, so unfortunately won't be able to hear you on the call because it's too loud to listen to the radio in there, but I know you'll do a great job. So best of luck on the call. And we appreciate all your time once again. One day I'll buy you a steak dinner or something and we'll work this out because you've given me far too much of your time. But I consider you a friend. You're cursed because you're my friend now. It's not like it's not a business thing. We're friends. You are now cursed just like Craig is. You're a friend.
One of these days when I can slip away from my family, I'm going to a Cubs game with you.
You got a deal. Me and my mom have tons of Cubs tickets, and that is the first thing I'll do to make up for all this nonsense here on Braggs and Stands. Take you out to Wrigley.
All right, bud. See you, man.
All right.
See you, Craig.
Boiler up. That is Bobby Riddell, color analyst for Radio Purdue Men's Basketball. Does a great job with Rob Blackman, two of the best. Rob was on with Coach Painter earlier for the Matt Painter Show. Sasha and Edie were on with Tom Brew, and now you get some Bobby Riddell with Gregory Braggs and Craig Bowers here on Braggs in the Stand. So a big day of Purdue men's basketball coverage for Purdue fans to eat up with the big week ahead and the big game tomorrow night, Craig. Are you going to be able to get into the house tomorrow night? You've been making it into the stadiums here lately, so I've been happy to hear about that. Are you going to be in Mackey tomorrow night for the big game? I know it's a hot ticket and an expensive one at that.
Yeah, I've only missed 2 home games so far this year. One, I was in Denver, so I didn't have a choice. I was in Denver working. So I've only missed one where I've been here in the area, and I went ahead. I did a rare thing. I usually wait until last minute and watch ticket prices crash and try to get in last minute. I actually bought a ticket yesterday.
You go.
Because I knew that come tomorrow, as it gets closer to the game, those prices are going to go up, not down.
Yep.
So I locked one in. I didn't even ask the guy where it was. I found out afterwards. I'm not going to be lower level tomorrow. That was going to be a little pricey for me, but I went ahead and got one bought to make sure I was going to be there because there's no way I was going to miss this one. So.
Well, you'd be better. You'd be the one to better tell, being that I'm new to this Purdue game here the last 5-6 years. I've lost track now. I think it's 5 years. As far as biggest games in Mackey Arena, history or in the last 10 to 15 years, Purdue versus Virginia comes to mind the year after Virginia beat them in the Elite Eight. Of course, my guy Sasha went off in that game, and they ended up blowing out Virginia. I don't know how Virginia finished with Duke tonight because I went live right at the end, but I know they gave them a good game. They probably lost. But as far as games at Mackey, big-time games at Mackey, where does this one rank? Number 3 versus number 13 in the country. Big Ten in a lot of ways on the line. 2 potential Final Four type of teams coming off a game that went to double overtime with, talent all over the court on both sides with Illinois and Purdue. Where does this one rank for you? What are some other games that stand out to you in your mind?
Man, that's a tough question. You really should have sent me that so I could prep for it. I'm really good about, thinking back on players and the team itself and the impact. I have a harder time remembering individual games and kind of where they sat situationally within the season. I think a few years ago, maybe the last Big Ten title we won, I feel like we beat IU to win the Big Ten.
Last Big Ten
race.
title they won was at Northwestern when the Elite Eight team.
Oh, okay. No, this would have been like
because I snuck into the fucking line.
What was the one we won before that? Maybe I thought the team.
And then before that, it was at home because they always show it on the big board. And I think it was to beat IU because they show it on the big board, and it was at Mackey, and there was like a huge celebration, which I'm really hoping for this year. But it's not the end all be all. But I'd be lying if I wasn't dying for that moment on senior night. Or senior day, whatever.
I think that was a big one just because it's against your rival at home to win a Big Ten championship. So I thought that one was huge. I'm sure there's a lot of big ones if we go further back, but we still got quite a bit of season left. So maybe it doesn't have quite the urgency in terms of importance as some of those other ones that we could go back to. But nonetheless, it's a real big one against the number 13 team. That Virginia game was big because it was a little bit of payback and whatnot. But that was about December or whatever. We were just kind of getting into the season and whatnot.
Big Ten ACC challenge.
I think this one's quite a bit bigger than that one. I don't know that we have
the game against Iowa to start the year to be number 1 certainly had a lot of pomp and circumstance before the game and the vibes in the stadium.
Yeah. I think this is the biggest game of the season, especially a home game without a doubt, because of what's riding on the line and 2 highly ranked teams. I don't know that we have the same intense hatred towards Illinois as we do towards IU or even Ohio State or even Michigan State in some ways, but it's just a huge game because they're 2 really good teams. They're both ranked high, and it's for the lead in the Big Ten. And whoever wins it is without a doubt in the driver's seat the rest of the way.
Yeah, I mean, especially for Illinois, if they were to win this game, because Michigan State just lost to the Rutgers. They blew one to Northwestern. Illinois is the one team that hasn't slipped on the banana peel, so to speak, where so these other teams have Wisconsin and Michigan State play tomorrow night before Purdue play. So one of those two teams is going to have 4 losses. Wisconsin barely snuck by Penn State. All these bottom of the ranking Big Ten teams keep coming one or 2 points short of upsets against some of these other teams outside of Purdue, and it's been really frustrating. But that's kind of how it goes, I guess, when it comes to the Big Ten. So it's probably a bigger game for Purdue than it is Illinois. But you're right; whoever wins is in the driver's seat. But neither are completely out of it with a loss either, with still games more than a few games remaining. So it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds. I'm glad you'll be able to be at the game. The house will certainly be rocking. I'm just really excited for it all to unfold. We're getting some updates in the chat. Virginia beat Duke with a last-second 3. So that's interesting because, as a Purdue fan, watching all these Big Ten games, praying for big other teams, the rivals, to lose, so Purdue can move up the Big Ten ranking. You're also watching all the teams in the top 10 because overall seeding for the NCAA tournament is just as important as if they win the Big Ten or not. I mean, to me, getting a 1 or 2 or to me at worst a 3 seed, because if it falls below a 3 seed and you get a 4 seed or lower, that's worst case scenario. And that means something went really wrong here at the end of the year. All these other teams in the top 10 losing is just as important. And you're seeing a lot of turnover besides Gonzaga, of course, who plays, snooze fest games every night and yet somehow gets to stay in the top 3. And nothing will piss me off more. I guess in years where I don't have a rooting interest for who's in the top 3, it didn't never really bother me. But now that I'm watching this up against Purdue, I think it's a joke that Gonzaga gets an automatic bid to a 1 seed. You can't tell how many quad 1 wins do they have. It's ridiculous. They're not playing anybody any night. And you got Arizona State, giving UCLA all they can handle the other night. You got Auburn barely beating Georgia the other night. The ACC only has 1 team in Duke that's going to make the tournament at this point, who just lost to Virginia, an unranked team. But if Gonzaga was in one of these other conferences, they'd have more than a few losses. But I'm looking at all these other top 10 games. And so it's crucial that these other teams lose games too, in order for Purdue to hold in that 1 to 2 seed range for the tournament, to give their path a little bit of an easier road to get to the Sweet 16. And then it's up for grabs at that point, because you're going to be playing quality teams the rest of the way. And I don't think any Purdue fan is going to take for granted who they play in the first or second round, regardless of what their seed is after everything with Purdue's history and luck. So, it is what it is, but it certainly are things that I'm paying attention to, but that's all, on the periphery. Tomorrow night, Purdue versus Illinois. We've talked a lot about it with Bobby, but we can dig into it a little more if you want. I mean,
I just want to kind of chime in on the point you were making there about these other teams losing and watching that.
Yeah, go ahead.
For me, I've been a Purdue fan for a long time. I've seen us win a lot of Big Ten championships. I've seen us win the Big Ten championship tourney before and whatnot. I'm really just worried about March and regardless of what some other fans want to say about, well, who cares about the seeding? We just beat who we play. Well, you know what? The number 1 seed historically has the easiest path to people to beat. So
right.
That matters. I mean, that's something that I care about watching and whatnot. And, depending on who you look at right now, we're a 1 seed on some people's projections. We're a 2 seed on some others and whatnot. Duke losing's a big deal. And we could finish 2nd or 3rd in the Big Ten and still get a number 1 seed. I was listening to Hummel and Goodman earlier, and Goodman said, well, if Purdue loses against Illinois, that probably takes them out of 1 seed contention. And Hummel was like, no, it doesn't. Because their preseason was so good. Their non-conference season was so good. If they beat Illinois, they're in a really good position. They could maybe lose against the Wisconsin.
Well, that's why winning the Big Ten regular season, I feel like, is important, because then, to me, if they win the Big Ten championship in the regular season, no matter what they do in the tournament, I feel like they're locked into a 1 or 2 seed at worst. Yeah. Illinois, they backdoored their way to a 1 seed last year. They didn't win the Big Ten regular season. They kind of got screwed because of Michigan, but then they won the Big Ten tournament, and that vaulted them up to a 1 seed. So it is a what have you done for me lately as we get to the end of the season with the people that are in charge of making the rankings.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying they can lose a bunch. I'm just saying,
right?
Even if we lose tomorrow night, I don't think the path to number 1 is done, because you're going to see these other teams in other conferences, especially Kansas is going to lose some more games. Duke is going to lose some more games. Auburn's eventually going to get caught.
I don't know if they are. They might, because Georgia gave them a run, but they have an easier schedule here.
Tom Crean, Georgia with like 6-12 record. Like, come on. That's
college basketball for you, for everybody but Gonzaga.
Yeah, they'll get caught eventually. I just think, we wrote, so many people wrote Purdue off as a 1 seed earlier this year when we took a couple losses right out of the gate in the Big Ten. Like, there's a lot of basketball left to play. Teams are gonna lose games.
Yep,
it's gonna happen. So
yep, I agree.
But yeah, I'd love to. If somebody told me we'd get a 1 seed with win the Big Ten, I'll take the 1 seed as a fan.
Well, I think maybe for one of these future episodes, maybe we have to wait all the way until when Purdue plays IU in the final game of the regular season to bring on Brian Tonsoni, who's co-host of Assembly Call, which is a very popular IU podcast. But he also does work with Delphi Bracketology. And they have a show each week on the ISC network, and they talk about their rankings, and they normally do a very good job of predicting where the rankings are going to be. And they don't have them right now as a 1 seed. They have them as a top 2 seed. And he said, don't kill me, Purdue, my fellow Purdue fans. And I did threaten him on Twitter about that. So I'd love to bring on Brian to get his thoughts on how that all breaks down. Maybe the vision will be more clear after tomorrow night's game. But as you said, anything can happen with any of these games. So it's hard to project when you still have 5, 6, 7 games to be played. But I would love to get his opinion on why Gonzaga gets an automatic 1, doesn't play any quad 1 games. If Purdue wins tomorrow night, I think they have the most quad 1 wins in the country. But Gonzaga has like one quad 1. I think they're 2, 2 and 3 or something in quad 1 games, or two, no, not 2 and 3. They're 2 and 1 in their 3 quad 1 games or some shit. I don't know. Gonzaga's just pissing me off.
Who was their 4th one? Wasn't it was Arizona?
Who's that?
In their projections, didn't they have Arizona as their 4th?
I didn't see. I just saw that he said he didn't have Purdue as 1.
That's the one that throws me. Like, if you wanna throw up Kentucky or Duke before they lost tonight in front of us, fine. Like, I can understand that argument, but man, the Pac-12 has 2 teams. Like, come on, I don't get that one at all. But
yeah, it'll be interesting. But as far as tomorrow night with Purdue and Illinois. Certainly excited. I hope that they let the bigs play. I know that's just kind of an offhanded, statement by all fans, because a foul is a foul, and we'll all be screaming for them if we think there is one and they're not calling it because they're letting the bigs play. It felt like they were letting them play to start the last game, and then Kofi got into foul trouble, which then turned into this in the second half at the Illinois game. IU was a crazy atmosphere. Illinois was just under that. But in the second half, I felt like Illinois really swayed the refs, because after every call, the entire stadium would just go ballistic, like the refs had no idea what they were doing. And the foul calls were definitely weighted in Purdue's favor. I mean, they I think doubled them in free throws that day. And, hey, Jaden's driving to the rim. They're shooting threes. Kofi wasn't in to get to the foul line like he does all the time. And, Illinois fans are throwing their hands up like, well, we're getting screwed by the refs. Well, you got to drive to the rim to get a call. You're not always going to get those foul calls at the 3-point line. So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds as far as how they're going, because I think everything starts. Every game Purdue starts with throwing it into Edey and seeing how they go from there. So it'll be interesting to see how Kofi versus Edey dictates how this game is going to go to start the game.
Yeah, and going into the last game, I made some comment about let Kofi get his. I don't care if he gets 35 or 40, just shut everybody else down.
Mm-hmm.
And then the exact opposite happened, right?
Right.
So I'm like, well, this is good too. Zach's just going to totally dominate Kofi, get him into foul trouble and get him out of the game altogether. But like you said, it almost created this weird counter advantage for them because then all of a sudden they weren't running through a dominant big man. And it was like everything was pick and roll and Frazier or Curbelo just running around. And like Bobby said, they didn't expect him to play at all, let alone to play the amount of minutes that they did. So maybe they didn't prep for it quite as much and that sort of thing. But the guards really got going. And I still think I'm going to double down here, Braggs. I still think the importance to us beating them is holding down Plummer and Frazier and Curbelo and keeping them from going off. If Kofi gets his, I'm okay with Kofi getting his. I think when all their guards start really hitting, Grandison went off for a bunch of threes against us, and he's not a great three-point shooter. But when those guys get going on top of Kofi, and then Kofi comes back in and he gets to be dominant a little bit there towards the end, that's where I think we really get in trouble, or they can really get people in trouble, because Frazier will have some games where he's off shooting 3 of 10, 2 of 11. He's had some games like that here even recently. And I think if you kind of keep their guards in check and keep them from blowing up too, that's when you can really hold that team down a little bit. I was surprised at the line. Did you see what it was?
No, I didn't.
6.5 to start
for Purdue.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I know we're at home, and that home court means something, but man, Illinois is tough, and a team
that's
that
a big
took
number.
us to double overtime, that's a big number to me.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State, they gave him a big number, and I was telling some people, I don't bet, but I was telling some people, like, every game is close for Purdue. I'd be taking the number with Ohio State. And then they were up by 20 in the second half. I'm like, boy, do I look stupid. And then Purdue, brings them back into the game. And you're like, well, shit, there you go. Now I look like a soothsayer. But for a minute there, when they were up 20, I'm like, damn, I'm a dumbass. So you never know. And Illinois, it all depends on how their three-point shooting is, And I thought Purdue did a decent job in the first half, and then the floodgates open up. I thought Sasha did a decent job on Trent Frazier in the last game. I thought Trent Frazier was all over Sasha, but then they ended up playing like almost 2 games, because they had 2 overtimes, and Sasha ends up going for 22 because he hit some big shots in overtime. And, before you know it, you look down and everyone had a day except for Kofi. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds in regards to, how the shooting is, because you saw in the last game, Grandison hit some big threes against IU. And if he's going, then you've got Plummer, who's very good, deadly from the 3-point line, deadly from the free throw line. Then you got Trent Frazier, who is very clutch player. That worries me. That always worries me. It's a tough matchup to me with Purdue with these guys. But I feel good about Painter going up against some of these teams for a second time. Once he's seen what they want to do against us, Painter, I trust him. He's, to me, one of the best coaches in the country. And I trust that he is going to come up with a game plan. You saw it against Iowa. The Iowa game, it was like, they should have lost that game in a lot of ways, in my opinion. I mean, if not for the first game.
Yeah.
Because of their unbelievable offense. And then Painter adjusted and they beat their ass in Iowa. And that press was nothing to them. Now, they worked so hard on that press against Iowa. And then, in this last game, they press us, against Michigan. And again, we forget how to break it down.
Yeah, but man,
for a couple plays at least.
I give a pretty free pass on that, because those guys end up having to spend the night in Minnesota Thursday night, come back Friday, end up having to spend the night in Indy Friday, and I think Painter said they got 1 45-minute practice in, maybe 2. He just said, hey, we didn't really have time to spend much time preparing for what Michigan does press-wise, because I was just worried about these guys getting their legs back under them after everything that happened and yada, yada. So I'm not too worried about that. They fixed it pretty quick by throwing a screener back there, having Sasha run back there and screen and whatnot in the backcourt. And then we handled it just fine after that for the most part. So with everything that happened there and a little bit of chaos that it was, they only created one turnover from the press that whole time. So I give a little bit of a free pass there. I think, I don't know, like, yeah, he's a great X's and O's coach. But, man, I just don't know how many changes there are to make in this Illinois-Purdue matchup. Like, both teams know who each other are. We can make the change for Curbelo.
Exactly. That's the one I'm thinking most about. How are they going to counter what Curbelo did to us?
Like Bobby said, on that high pick and roll, against Frazier, you've got to hedge out on that as a guard. You can't sag way back. And then that gives more of a lane for Kofi to roll back or whatever the big is to roll back and creates more chaos there underneath the rim. Well, you don't need to do that consistently with Curbelo, and they basically were guarding him like the other guards there. I think he will make some changes there, have those guys sag back more and kind of protect and be ready so that he can't just go all over the place where he wants in the lane. But, there's not too many new guys on either one of these teams from last year. To me, they know pretty well who each other are, and there's only going to be so many adjustments I think they can make, and it's just going to be who plays better, who
if
makes
Kofi
shots.
Plays his regular minutes, something I've noticed watching Illinois is Payne or Brad Underwood, the coach for Illinois, always subs Kofi out on the last whistle before a TV timeout. TV timeouts always being at 16 minutes, 12 minutes, 8 minutes, and 4 minutes. And anytime there's a dead ball before those marks, he takes Kofi out to get him an extra breather before the TV timeout. And I wonder, because I know Painter's very, good about substitutions. I wonder how much he's paid attention to that in regards to attacking them in the post when they pull Kofi out. And, depending on foul situation, and hopefully there is no foul situation, making sure Edey is in on those moments so he can eat up when Kofi's out. I think that's a big key. If I would hope that he attacks if that comes to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, their backup, I forget what his name was. I thought
Omar Payne.
Yeah, I thought he did an awful nice job. He doesn't have Kofi's size, but he really only has to worry about what he does defensively. And I thought he was a little more athletic in terms of the way he can guard. Yeah. I thought he did it. In some ways, I thought he did a better job defensively against our bigs than Kofi did. So,
well, it's funny you mention that because my buddy Nick Henderson, who's the reason I have any affiliation to Sasha in general, is because his little brother Andrew, they played on their little league teams and high school teams, and Andrew was the center, Sasha's being the guard, and so Nick has known these guys for a long time, and he's an Illinois fan, and we went to the Illinois game together, and he said Omar Payne's a better defensive player than Kofi, and that shocked me when he said that, because Kofi's just such a monster down there. But then, yeah, like you said, you saw a little bit of that when Kofi came out. Omar can certainly hold his own. He's physical, maybe too physical. If you look at his rap sheet beyond the flagrant foul he had on Sash at Illinois, he's had other moments when he played for, I believe, Tennessee last year, and doing some dirty things, I think. So it'll be interesting to see if we were joking on the way to the Illinois game. We're like, Sasha's getting in a fight today, because it just seems like he's always in the middle. And then sure as shit, he did. And it wouldn't surprise me if things got a little physical. I mean, the two times Sasha's been involved in things, Griffin a few years ago, Illinois stepped on Sasha at Mackey. So Illinois is always bringing a little extra sauce when they play Purdue. It'll be interesting to see if there's any chippiness, these two teams flexing their muscles. I saw Andy Katz on the Big Ten Network. They were giving their bold predictions, and he said that his bold prediction was that Illinois and Purdue would face each other 4 times this year, twice in the regular season, once in the Big Ten tournament, and then once in the Final Four. What are your thoughts on that?
Man, I hope not.
That was my first thought too. I hate sounding like such a pussy about it because it's like bring it on, and Purdue beat them, but man, that would be you'd be pulling out all your hairs. Right. But at the end of the day, whoever you play in the Final Four.
No, the last year would have been 17-18 with Dakota and Isaac and those guys, right? We play Michigan twice in the regular season. We beat them away and we beat them at home, and then we play them in the Big Ten tournament, and they finally got us there. Like, I just it's almost like the rivalry thing. Like, there's only so many times two really good teams can play each other and it not go the other way eventually. So all I'm gonna say is if we play 4 times, I hope we lose one of those before the fourth game.
To me, that's the best case scenario. I mean, I want them to win the Big Ten title for a couple different reasons. One, in the regular season, the seeding I think is locked into a 1 or 2 if they do that. 2, they get the trophy, 25th Big Ten title, most ever in the Big Ten. I think 24 still is the most. So they start to separate themselves a little bit. But then, also, I'm not worried about the Big Ten tournament as much. You saw Illinois win the Big Ten tournament last year and then lose in the Sweet 16 to Loyola, or the game before the Sweet 16 in the second round. So to me, the team that made the Elite Eight for Purdue a few years back, they lost their first game out the gates to Minnesota at the United Center. So they got a few extra days off, got to reset, and then they went on their run. They got hot as hell and went on their run. So, yeah, if Illinois wants to take us down, I think we'd probably have to win our first game in the Big Ten tournament. Then we'd play them on that Saturday. If the Big Ten tournament started today, I think that's how the bracket would go. And then if Illinois wants to beat us, then that's fine. And then we'll see them in the Final Four. Definitely, but that's all projecting. But that's what fans do, getting ahead of ourselves and things of that nature is what makes being a fan fun. But certainly looking forward to tomorrow night. Man, the house is going to be rocking.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really exciting. I'm pumped for it. It's going to be loud in there. One of the loudest games I can remember was Michigan State at Purdue. I think it was that 17-18 year where it just went crazy in there the whole time, so loud. And I got a feeling tomorrow is going to be a very similar situation to that. 2 really high-end teams from the Big Ten playing for all the keeps for right now anyway. Gonna be a big one all the way through. And I think the paint crew is going to bring it tomorrow, and I think it's going to matter. And the other thing I'll say, I think 3-point shooting wise, weren't we against Wisconsin? Weren't we only like low 30 or high 20% in 3-point shooting on the night? It wasn't good.
Last night too.
What's that?
In Michigan, it was low.
Right, that's what I was saying. Against Michigan, it was low.
Oh, I'm sorry. You said,
yeah. We don't shoot bad at home.
Yeah, I think they were like 5 of 22 or some shit from 3.
Yeah, we don't have 2 bad shooting nights in a row in Mackey. Like, maybe on the road, but we don't have 2 bad shooting nights in a row at Mackey. So I got a feeling our shooting is going to be – they've been home a few days. I think it's going to be back. Their legs are underneath them. I think we're going to be back to normal 3-point shooting. And I still say we pull it out in my mind in the end. I'm calling it, Braggs, right now. We're going to pull it out. But I don't. I'm not calling a cover though. So all you guys that message me in Boiler Diehards. By the way, I don't gamble, so all you guys asking me for like insights on the line, I think that's hilarious. But I don't think we cover tomorrow.
Yeah,
it'll be close.
Too hard to say, but Topher is saying Sasha's due for a game. I feel like this is some of the best basketball he's ever played of his career, rightfully so. He's a senior, but like even in the last game, he had 9 points and 3 layups in the second half that I thought were huge. And even beyond that, finding his way to double figures consistently now, whether it's at road or at home or on the road. He's due for a game, but he's finding ways to contribute in so many other ways too. Passing, he's leading the team in assists, playing to my eyes, very good defense. he had that block, which is an outlier, but he had it. So meant to message him about that. But Topher said he's going to be sitting in 111, row 19. So he's not too far from me. I'm in 109, and I'm the top row in 109 on the opposite side of the media. That's my season. That's where my mom and I's season tickets are. So Topher will be in the stands. Craig will be in the stands. Braggs will be in the stands as per usual. My guy Pat Bleck in the chat asking how I've been doing. I'm doing great. Not talking Bears. We're talking Boilers. So that makes me a lot happier because the Bears are just make you pull your hair out. Although we've got some new changes.
I'd be a terrible co-host for that too. So
yeah. Well, hey, you do a great job here co-hosting for our Boilermakers shows. Try to bring on some different personalities here going forward. I was talking to Brian Newbert. I was like scared to approach him because he's so dry, and I think he'd probably hate me, because I'm just such a talker, and I just wasn't sure if he was like going to be like, get away from me, you freak. But he was very nice. He gave me some of his time. We were talking, and I mentioned about possibly bringing him on the show here in the next few weeks, but I always preface with those guys. I know how busy they are. So maybe we can effort him on. Been in some side talks with Robbie Hummel about coming on, but as Bobby Riddell mentioned, he does a game literally every night. And if I wasn't, I'm not going to share his message with me, but he showed me a screenshot of his schedule over the next month and a half. And he literally has one day off in the next month and a half. And he offered to potentially do a show with us on that night, but I have to check with him the night before. So no promises. And I told him no hard feelings if he can't, because I completely understand. But just the fact that he would even consider that on his day off when he's doing Big Ten games every night. And then he's, dropping in these Bulls games every once in a while too. He's done like 4 or 5 Bulls games now. And as a Chicago Bulls fan, that makes me incredibly happy because I think he does just a fantastic job of breaking down the game. Selfishly, I'd like him to stay in Big Ten coverage because he just knows so much about the Big Ten and does such a great job there. But I just feel like Robbie Hummel is destined for greater pastures here going forward. So maybe we get him on. Ryan Klein was supposed to be a part of the show tonight, but unfortunately he had something come up. But we're buddies. He was at the game chugging beer in the stands, and I was hoping to get him on to get his thoughts since he was there for the game. We actually went to the tournament game last year together. So he was young. He's like, Braggs, let me know if you're going to get tickets for the tournament this year. I'm like, all right, Ryan. I'm like, Ryan, you're a celebrity. You can literally, they'll get the Purdue team will give you tickets, bro. You don't need Braggs to get them for you. Why don't you get me tickets, Ryan?
Right.
But he was a lot of fun to hang out with last year. Yeah, him and his buddy went with me and my mom, because I had him on right before the tournament. And he was like, I don't have a ticket to the game. I was like, well, I do, Ryan. And so here he comes with him and his buddy, and they're crazy. Like, Ryan's crazy. And so they're having a good time, talking about all they're big gamblers, talking about all their bets and shit. And I'm like, focus on the game, Ryan. I don't care about your bets. I'm dying over here. But Brian's been there and done that. So nothing phases him in that regard. So we'll try to get some big guests on here as the season winds down and see how things go. Maybe even bug Sasha to come on one last time before the tournament tips off, because I don't want to ask them after the season's over unless they win it all. So we'll try to get them on before the tournament starts. We'll see if we can get that worked out. But a lot of guests to think about and consider.
Hey, we need to think about a pre-draft show. See if we can get Jaden on.
Well, we pre-draft. Yeah, that would be a good idea. Yeah, absolutely. That'd be a lot of fun. And then, I saw somebody had Zach Edey in there drafted in last pick in the first round. I was like, you can't take him from us. We need him next year. So I'm hoping he does the Travion and takes a peek and decides to come back. But that's being selfish. If he decides to go to the NBA, I certainly would support him in that endeavor. Yeah. But I think maybe he's got one more year of maturing to go here in the Big Ten and getting to be a full-time starter off of Travion. He could put up some insane numbers as the full-time starter next year that might push him higher into the draft. I don't think he'll make it to his senior year here, but those are all things for another day's conversation. But you never know. But even Sasha's getting NBA looks right now, which is pretty cool to think about. But when you consider where the league is in the NBA with the 3-point is reigning supreme. Hell, you got Caitlin Clark pulling up from the logo.
Good Lord, man. That was incredible.
Dude. And everybody's been talking about it. Rafael Davis, who came on this show, brought it up, a few times on his Twitter that his favorite player right now is Caitlin Clark. So I had them on just last night or whatever it was, 2 nights ago when they played Michigan. I think it was last night. And my goodness, Jimmer Fredette range, holy shit.
Further out than that, man. She pulled up with 3 seconds into the shot clock. I mean,
yeah. And they were toast. They were getting blown out. And she almost brought them back. And Michigan's, top 6 team in the country. And, you're just like, holy crap, this girl is the real deal. And the thing that really stood out to me watching her do that was just, and Steph Curry is one of my favorite players ever. I mean, I specifically went to a Bulls game 5 or 6 years ago to watch his pregame routine. And I had a Davidson jersey that he was nice enough to sign. And he signed for literally every person in the tunnel, man, woman, and child. And I had a Davidson jersey. So he made sure to put some ink on that. And I was really grateful. And I told him, he's my favorite player since Jordan, and then that even includes Derrick Rose, who was one of my favorite Bulls, since Jordan, but obviously his stardom was shortened because of injury. And I just look at Steph Curry and how much he's changed the game as it used to be. And you look at Caitlin Clark, and I think that's just another example of that. You just have never seen people pulling up from the range and distance that they do nowadays in the shot clock, like you said, early in the shot clock. And, Damian Lillard to win a game in the playoffs, he's dribbling just past the half court line, has zero intention of even getting close to the 3-point line or to the rim. Right. He just pulls up, bang, down the well to push them to the next round. And I just feel like Steph Curry is the reason you're seeing any of that. I don't think there has ever been a player since Michael Jordan to revolutionize the game of basketball like Steph Curry has since Michael. And I know there's a lot of LeBron enthusiasts that would disagree, but you can't teach what LeBron does. He's a physical specimen, and to me, a guy like Steph Curry, every kid dribbling a basketball outside can work their ass off. And I don't want to sell short Steph Curry's unbelievable talents that are rare too, but hard work, man, will get you there. Obviously it takes some things that you can't quantify, but you have a better chance of becoming Steph Curry than you do LeBron James. You have a better chance of becoming a Sasha Stefanovic than you do a Jaden Ivey if you're out there working on your game right now, and I just look at a guy like Steph Curry, and I don't think anybody has revolutionized the game since Michael. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to disagree. You're going to get really mad at me here.
That's fine.
In terms of changing the way the game was played, I don't think Michael did that. I just think he was the best player in the world at the way the game was played for many, many years and did it at a higher level. I think Shaq changed the way the game was played, because if you look at how they changed a lot of the rules about post play and how defensive could play, that's because of the way Shaq dominated down there with his size.
That's fair.
You think back to them changing rules about Wilt Chamberlain back in the day as a center. I think Shaq forced that change to happen again. And then Steph changed the way the game was played from outside. I don't if you would say what changed stylistically, offense or defense, or rules that were impacted because of the way Jordan played. To me, he was the greatest player to ever play the game the way it was played, and still is.
Right.
I don't know if
I think that's a fair point, because the only person to really replicate what Michael did in the way that people are replicating Steph Curry was Kobe Bryant. Right. And Kobe Bryant's a rare talent. It's not like everybody can grow up to become Kobe or Michael. So I think that's a fair statement. I guess what I always go back to in this discussion, and maybe we had this before because I've had this argument with different people, so I've lost track who I argue with this about.
Yeah,
but
we argued it before too.
So when I was a kid, I mean, the statement was, like Mike, if I could be like Mike,
right.
And when I went out on the, when I went out and took the court anytime as a kid or went out in my driveway, I thought I wanted to be like Michael Jordan. And maybe it wasn't just, I knew I couldn't dunk like him, but you could play defense and have that fire and passion. You could, work on the other parts of it, aside from the above the rim talent. We all wanted to be like Mike, and now every kid wants to be like Steph, and that's, I think, where I guess what I mean with the comparison. But maybe I think you have a very valid point. Doesn't make me mad by any means, because you're probably right in a lot of ways that Steph might have even revolutionized the game more than what Michael did, because Michael just perfected the game in a way that no one can really do, and Steph is changing the game in a way that other people are replicating. So
right. I guess that's my point. I
think that's a very valid point. And that's why we bring you here on Brags in the Stands, because, we balance each other well. And I'm always in the clouds and you always keep me grounded, and we got to, have that balance. And then Bobby agrees with you more than he agrees with me. So I got to work on this. How'd you like how I busted this out on Bobby, that picture? What'd you think of that? That was pretty funny.
Yeah, that was nice. I enjoyed that. When was that?
That was just coming out of a timeout. Obviously, you see the scores 49.
But that was just a couple games ago?
No, it was against Michigan.
The last game.
Yeah, and I was watching it back today. They were coming out of a timeout.
He looks like a little kid in that picture. So I thought
it's it's a screenshot. So I made sure to pause it at the perfect moment, and he was just kind of in that trance where he's got like that stare, and then he just kind of was like, I don't know what he was doing. He was just making a funny face, and I was like, this is perfect. I'm gonna make sure to bust this out for this show. But it was just in a quick thing as they were coming out of a timeout. So. We got Chris Gonzalez in the chat. What up? How we doing, Chris? Congratulations to you. I think I just saw that he's just became a police officer. I think I saw on Twitter, just passed all that stuff. So congrats to you, Chris, on that. That's a big accomplishment. You should be very proud. And yeah, I'm not trying to hate on Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose, youngest MVP, won as many MVPs as Kobe Bryant. A lot of people don't know that, and could have been the greatest point guard to ever do it had he not gotten hurt. So that was certainly disappointing, to say the least. But hey, Chicago's used to disappointment. Maybe one of these days they'll turn the tide in that regard. But nothing disappointing about.
You cannot say an organization is used to disappointment when you've won 6 titles.
The city of Chicago is used to disappointment. No,
okay.
Michael Jordan is the silver lining in that, and I think that's why we don't get the kind of luck other like Boston gets. Like people are like, why can't we be like Boston? Well, we had Michael Jordan, and no other city can claim to have the greatest player to ever play any sport. And that's Michael, in my opinion. And I got to watch him. I didn't see his rookie year, his second year. I was born in 85. He was drafted in 85. But the entire 90s, I worshiped the ground he walked on. It's the reason I'm a sports fanatic today. So I feel very lucky that I got to watch Michael Jordan. And I'll never forget those days, and I'll never take them for granted. I wish I was a little older, but at least I got to see him. There's kids growing up today that never got to see him play, and that always blows my mind. And I was lucky enough, and you were lucky enough to see that. You were probably a Pacer fan.
Yeah, as a Pacers fan, I unfortunately was able to see that. So there were several years we would have won a title had it not been for Michael being in the way. So
yeah. So again, congratulations to you, Chris. On your achievements. That's pretty cool of you. But yeah, Michael Jordan giving Reggie Miller the business was the best of the best. Reggie bowing when he beat us, and then Scotty. Oh, those were the good old days. The best of the best. But these are some fun times right now too. Hopefully Purdue can make some memories that we can carry with us forever, and we'll be here to cover it here on Brags in the Stands, as we always do. So I think that'll wrap things up for tonight. Craig, again, thank you for all of your time. You always do a fantastic job here on Brags in the Stands covering the Purdue Boilermakers. Why don't you tell people about the Facebook page and where they can go and follow you guys and the good work you do there on Boiler Diehards?
Yeah, the Facebook group it is called Boiler Diehards. It is a private group. We do monitor who comes. That way we check every single profile as people come in. That way we keep it true Boiler Diehards, given the name. So when people request to join the group, we go through, we check to see if there's some Boiler Connect there. You went to Purdue University, you have likes on your page as a Purdue fan, that type of stuff. So we only let those true Boiler Diehards in.
Don't let any spies sneak through the cracks.
No, we do not. So you can look us up on Facebook. Just search for Boiler Diehards, request to join the group, and we'll get you added. There's, I think, 7,500 strong at this point. I've had a hard time keeping up on the numbers here lately.
All right.
And I got one final thought, Braggs.
I like it. Bring it.
Purdue fans, enjoy the moment. Braggs, my 70-something-year-old mother, I was talking to her the other day, and she says, if them boys keep letting teams come back, eventually it's going to bite them. I said, Mom, you know why it gets close? Because they're always playing ahead. These other teams are playing from behind. I want to know, I want to track. I want some statistical analysis on how many minutes we have played with the lead this year. Because it's got to be some kind of record, at least for Purdue.
Yep.
At least for Purdue. And teams, these other teams have a lot to say about it. And they're high-quality teams, and they're going to make their runs. And the ability to fend those runs off and really hardly ever play from behind in a lot of these games here lately, especially, it's just amazing. And we've got amazing talent. We got 4 guys that are probably going to at least get a landing spot in the NBA at some point. We've got a talent like Bobby said and Jaden Ivey that physically we haven't seen somebody like since Glenn Robinson. Win or lose, depending on how the season turns out, man, Purdue fans, just enjoy the moment and what we get to see right now, because it's a heck of a lot of fun.
Yeah, cheers to that, my friend. And Craig and I will be in the stands at Mackey Arena tomorrow night. I'll be going in right when the gates open at 7:30 Eastern time. Tip-off is at 9 p.m., a late tip-off for the ESPN scheduling. And I'll be going in right away so I can go get a seat in the J9 Club. They've got, and that's open access to anybody over by like section 111. And you can go in there. They got couches in there and seating area to watch the other games. And Michigan State versus Wisconsin will be on before that. So I'll be in there watching that. If anybody wants to come in there and come say hi and watch the game and watch me scream at the guy. Although what's nice about those games is whoever loses, it's good for Purdue. Although I think I'm going to be rooting for Michigan State in that regard. I want Wisconsin to get a few more losses. I was sitting in there for the IU Illinois game, and I think I was the only one rooting for IU because I wanted Illinois to get a loss, and all these Purdue fans are like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, dude, we need Illinois to lose. I don't care about, I know everybody hates them, but we needed them to win one game. Of course they couldn't because, Trace Jackson-Davis got to be a softie, but I'll save the shit talk for another day. Man, I could go all day about Trace Jackson-Davis, but I'm going to let you get to bed, Craig. You're on the East Coast, so it's 11 o'clock your time, still 10 o'clock here in the Central Time Zone. So appreciate all your time tonight, and I'm going to wrap up with you. So make sure you tune in for some future Boilermaker special edition shows. Might do a Super Bowl preview show if I find some time this weekend, but all eyes on the Purdue Boilermakers, number 3 in the country, taking on number 13 Illinois tomorrow night at Mackey Arena. See you tomorrow night. Have a great evening, and always Boiler up.